The thundering hooves of the stagecoach horses echoed across the vast Wyoming territory as Wilhelmina Cooper clutched her worn leather satchel, her knuckles white with determination. The year was 1878, and she had made the decision that would change her life forever. She was not going to meet the man who had paid for her passage from Boston to this wilderness. The advertisement had seemed promising 6 weeks ago. Successful rancher seeks educated, proper wife. Passage paid. Now, as the coach rumbled toward Silver Creek, she felt nothing but dread. 10 minutes to Silver Creek Station, folks, the driver called from above. Wilhelmina's heart hammered in her chest. She had formed her plan over the last 100 miles. She would slip away during the commotion of arrival and catch the eastbound coach scheduled for the following morning. The money sewn into the hem of her dress would be enough for the return fare. She would not become another disappointed mail-order bride, trapped in a loveless arrangement with a stranger. As the stagecoach rolled to a stop in front of the dusty station, Wilhelmina adjusted her bonnet to shield her face. The other passengers, a traveling salesman and an elderly couple, began gathering their belongings. "Miss Cooper," the station master approached as she stepped down. "There's a gentleman waiting for you inside." "Thank you," she replied with a polite nod, already scanning the area for her escape route. "I shall be there momentarily. Nature calls after such a long journey." The station master nodded understandingly, and Wilhelmina headed toward the small outhouse behind the station. Instead of entering, she quickly ducked behind it and made her way toward a stand of cottonwood trees. Her plan was to wait until nightfall, then find lodging in town until tomorrow's coach arrived. What she hadn't anticipated was the man who suddenly appeared before her, leaning against a tree with his arms crossed. "Miss Cooper, I presume?" His voice was deep and calm, with no trace of anger despite the obvious fact that she was fleeing. Wilhelmina froze, her breath catching in her throat. He was taller than she had expected, with broad shoulders and sun-bronzed skin. His eyes, piercing blue beneath the brim of a well-worn Stetson, studied her with surprising gentleness. I was just... She stammered, unable to formulate a plausible excuse. "Running away." He finished for her, the corner of his mouth lifting slightly. "Can't say I blame you. Coming all this way to marry a stranger isn't exactly what most women dream of." Wilhelmina straightened her spine, finding her voice. "Then you understand why I must leave." "I cannot marry a man I do not know or love." The man pushed himself off the tree and took a step toward her, removing his hat. His hair was the color of wheat fields with streaks of gold from the Wyoming sun. "Owen Reed," he introduced himself with a slight bow, "the man who sent for you." Wilhelmina swallowed hard. This wasn't how she had imagined her would-be husband. She had pictured someone older, rougher, crueler. Owen Reed looked to be in his early 30s, with laugh lines around his eyes and a face that spoke of hard work rather than hard living. "Mr. Reed, I apologize for the deception, but my mind is made up. I will be returning east on tomorrow's coach." Owen nodded, replacing his hat. "You're free to do that, Miss Cooper. I won't stop you." His response caught her completely off guard. "You won't?" "No, madam. I didn't bring you out here to imprison you. I was hoping for a partner, not a captive." He looked toward the station. "But before you make your final decision, I'd like to offer you a proposition." Wilhelmina regarded him warily. "What sort of proposition?" "Stay for 2 weeks. See the ranch, meet the people of Silver Creek, decide if this life might suit you after all." His eyes met hers directly. "If after that time you still wish to leave, I'll pay for your return journey myself." "And what do you gain from this arrangement?" she asked, suspicious of his generosity. Owen's expression softened. "A chance to prove that what I offered in that advertisement wasn't a lie. A chance to show you that there might be something worth staying for." He paused. "A chance for both of us to see if there might be something more than a business arrangement between us." "Something more?" "Yes, Miss Cooper. If you're looking for love, real love, it won't come from rushing back east or from marrying a stranger out of obligation, but it might come from giving this place and me a fair chance." Wilhelmina considered his words. 2 weeks seemed a small price to pay for a clear conscience, and the promise of a paid return ticket offered security she hadn't expected. "Very well, Mr. Reed. 2 weeks, but I make no promises beyond that." Owen nodded, a genuine smile spreading across his face. "That's all I ask." He extended his hand toward the station. "My wagon's out front. Shall we?" As they walked back toward the station, Wilhelmina felt a strange mix of trepidation and curiosity. The man beside her was nothing like what she had feared, but 2 weeks in the Wyoming territory would reveal whether Owen Reed was truly the man he appeared to be. The journey to Owen's ranch took nearly 2 hours by wagon. As they traveled, the landscape opened up before Wilhelmina's eyes, endless rolling hills covered in sage and prairie grass, dramatic buttes rising in the distance, and a sky so vast it seemed to swallow the horizon. "It's beautiful," she admitted, breaking the silence that had settled between them. Owen glanced at her, his expression warming. "Most folks from back east only see the harshness at first. Takes a special eye to see the beauty right away. I grew up in Vermont before moving to Boston," she explained. "The mountains there have their own grandeur, but this openness. It's breathtaking." "That it is, though it can be isolating in winter when the snows come." He guided the horses around a bend in the road. "What brought you to answer my advertisement, Miss Cooper, if you don't mind my asking?" Wilhelmina hesitated, unsure how much to reveal. "I was a teacher in Boston. The school closed due to lack of funding, with no family and dwindling savings." She trailed off, "and marriage to a stranger seemed better than destitution," Owen finished for her. "Yes," she admitted, "though I had second thoughts as soon as the coach left Boston." Owen nodded thoughtfully. "Understandable. I had my own reservations after sending the advertisement, wondered what kind of woman would respond, whether we'd suit each other at all." "Then why did you place it?" He was quiet for a moment, his eyes fixed on the road ahead. "A ranch needs a woman's touch to become a home, and a man gets tired of being alone with his thoughts after a while." There was more to it than that, Wilhelmina sensed, but she didn't press. They had 2 weeks to learn each other's stories. As they crested a hill, Owen pulled the wagon to a stop. Below them lay a valley with a creek winding through it, cottonwoods and willows marking its path. Nestled against the base of a gentle slope sat a substantial log house with a wide porch, several outbuildings and corrals containing horses. Smoke curled from the chimney, and even from this distance, Wilhelmina could see cattle grazing in the meadows beyond. "Reed's Crossing," Owen announced with quiet pride. "Started with 20 acres and a one-room cabin 8 years ago." "It's impressive," Wilhelmina said sincerely. The property spoke of hard work and careful planning, not the ramshackle homestead she had feared. As they approached the house, a woman emerged onto the porch, wiping her hands on her apron. She was older, perhaps in her 50s, with gray-streaked dark hair pulled back in a practical bun. "That's Mrs. Abernathy," Owen explained. "She comes from town 3 times a week to cook and help with the housekeeping. I told her to prepare a room for you." When they pulled up to the house, Mrs. Abernathy greeted them with open curiosity. "Welcome to Reed's Crossing, Miss Cooper. I hope your journey wasn't too taxing." "Thank you, Mrs. Abernathy. It was long but not unbearable." Owen helped Wilhelmina down from the wagon, his hands strong and steady at her waist. The brief contact sent an unexpected flutter through her stomach. "Mrs. Abernathy has prepared supper," Owen said. "You must be hungry after your travels." "That's very thoughtful," Wilhelmina replied, suddenly aware of her rumbling stomach. The interior of the house surprised her. Though unmistakably masculine in its furnishings, it was clean and well appointed. A large stone fireplace dominated the main room, with comfortable-looking chairs arranged before it. Bookshelves lined one wall, filled with volumes that spoke of an educated mind. "Your room is upstairs, first door on the right," Mrs. Abernathy explained. "I've laid out fresh water for washing up. Supper will be ready in 20 minutes. Left alone in the guest room, Wilhelmina took stock of her surroundings. The room was simple but comfortable, with a solid oak bed covered in a handmade quilt, a dresser, and a washstand. A window overlooked the creek and meadows beyond. It was far more pleasant than she had anticipated. After washing away the dust of travel and changing into a fresh dress, she made her way downstairs. The aroma of roast beef and fresh bread filled the air, making her mouth water. Owen waited at the bottom of the stairs, having changed into a clean shirt himself. "I hope the room is suitable," he said. "It's lovely," she replied honestly. "Your home is not what I expected, Mr. Reed." "Owen, please, and what did you expect? Something more primitive, I suppose." His laugh was warm and genuine. "I lived primitive for the first few years. Decided if I was going to stay in Wyoming, I might as well be comfortable doing it. Dinner was a surprisingly pleasant affair. Mrs. Abernathy joined them, her presence easing the potential awkwardness between Wilhelmina and Owen. The food was excellent roast beef, potatoes, fresh bread, and vegetables from Owen's kitchen garden. "So, Miss Cooper, Owen tells me you were a teacher in Boston, Mrs. Abernathy said as she passed the bread basket. "Yes, for 5 years at a girls' school." "We could use a proper teacher here in Silver Creek," the older woman commented. "The current schoolmaster is the blacksmith's son, knows his letters well enough, but not much beyond that." Owen nodded. "Education's important out here, though some folks don't see it that way. They figure as long as a child can count cattle and sign their name, that's learning enough." "And you disagree?" Wilhelmina asked, curious about his views. "A mind needs cultivation same as land does," Owen replied. "Otherwise it grows wild or lies fallow." His response pleased her. Perhaps there was more to this Wyoming rancher than she had initially judged. After dinner, Mrs. Abernathy took her leave, promising to return in 2 days. "Town's only 4 miles east if you need anything," she told Wilhelmina. "And the widow Jensen lives just over the next ridge. Good woman, raised 6 children on her own after her husband was killed in a mining accident." Once Mrs. Abernathy had departed, an awkward silence fell between Wilhelmina and Owen. They sat in the chairs before the fireplace, the crackling flames the only sound in the room. "I imagine you have questions," Owen finally said, breaking the silence. "Several," she admitted, "but I hardly know where to begin. Begin anywhere. We have 2 weeks, remember." Wilhelmina considered her most pressing concerns. "Your advertisement mentioned a successful ranch. I see that wasn't an exaggeration, but I wonder why did you settle here? You don't sound like you were born in the West," Owen smiled. "Good ear. I was born in Pennsylvania. My father was a banker, expected me to follow in his footsteps. I had other ideas. Such as ranching in Wyoming? Not at first. I went to college in New York, studied engineering, came west with the railroad after the war, worked as a surveyor for a few years, saved my money. When the railroad reached Cheyenne, I knew this territory would grow. Bought land cheap, started with a few cattle. The rest has been hard work and some luck with the weather." "You're well educated then," Wilhelmina observed. "Book learning, yes. But ranching was something I had to learn by doing, made plenty of mistakes early on, and yet you succeeded where many fail. I was fortunate, had money saved, didn't have to borrow much, and I had good neighbors who helped when I needed it." He paused, studying her face. "Now it's my turn. What made a Boston school teacher consider becoming a mail-order bride?" Wilhelmina looked into the fire, gathering her thoughts. "As I mentioned, the school closed. Teaching positions are scarce and without family support." She hesitated. "The truth is, Mr. Reed, Owen, I found myself in circumstances with few options. Marriage seemed the most practical solution." "Practical, but not particularly romantic," he observed. "Romance is a luxury many women cannot afford," she replied, more sharply than she intended. "Fair point." He leaned forward, his expression earnest. "I want to be clear about something, Wilhelmina. Our arrangement was meant to be practical on both sides. I need a partner here, someone to help make this place a home, perhaps raise children someday, but I never intended for it to be loveless." "You cannot manufacture love where it doesn't exist," she said softly. No, but you can create conditions where it might grow. His eyes held hers. That's what these 2 weeks are about. Not just for you to decide if you can tolerate life here, but for both of us to see if there's a spark worth nurturing. His honesty was disarming. Wilhelmina had expected either cold business arrangements or false declarations of instant affection. Owen's approach, practical yet open to genuine connection, was refreshingly direct. I appreciate your candor, she said finally, and I will try to approach these 2 weeks with an open mind. That's all I ask. Owen stood, stretching slightly. You must be tired after your journey. Tomorrow I'll show you around the ranch if you'd like. I would like that very much. He walked her to the stairs, maintaining a respectful distance. Good night, Wilhelmina. I'm glad you decided to stay, even if it's just for now. Good night, Owen. As she climbed the stairs, Wilhelmina realized that for the first time since leaving Boston, she felt something other than dread about her future, a cautious curiosity about what tomorrow might bring. The next morning, Wilhelmina woke to sunlight streaming through her window and the distant sounds of activity on the ranch. For a moment, she was disoriented, the unfamiliar room and the quality of light so different from her Boston apartment. Then memory returned the journey, her attempted escape, and Owen Reed's unexpected proposal. She dressed quickly in one of her more practical dresses and made her way downstairs. The main room was empty, but coffee bubbled on the stove in the kitchen and a note sat on the table. Had to check on a sick calf. Help yourself to breakfast. Back by 8. Owen, the grandfather clock in the corner, showed it was just past 7. Wilhelmina found bread, preserves, and some cold ham in the pantry. As she ate, she explored the main floor of the house. Besides the central living area and kitchen, there was a small study filled with more books than she would have expected, a formal dining room that looked rarely used, and a mudroom by the back door. The bookshelves held an eclectic collection: engineering texts, agricultural journals, history books, and, surprisingly, volumes of poetry and classic literature. She was examining a well-worn copy of the Iliad when Owen returned. "Morning," he greeted her, removing his hat as he entered. "I see you found breakfast. And your library," she replied, replacing the book. "You have quite a collection. Winter nights are long here. Reading keeps the mind from freezing along with everything else." He poured himself coffee. "How did you sleep?" "Quite well, thank you." "The air here, it's so different from the city." "Clean and quiet," Owen nodded, "though some find the quiet unsettling at first." "Not I," Wilhelmina assured him. "I grew up in the country, remember? The sounds of Boston never stopped, even at night." Owen sipped his coffee, studying her over the rim of his cup. "I promised you a tour today. Are you up for riding? We can take the wagon if you prefer, but you'll see more on horseback." "I can ride," she said, surprising herself with her eagerness. "It's been years, but I learned as a girl." "Good. I'll saddle Maple for you. She's gentle but not dull-witted, appropriate for someone who remembers the basics." An hour later they set out from the barn, Wilhelmina atop a chestnut mare with a white blaze, Owen on a larger bay gelding. Her riding habit, the only one she had packed, was already dusty, but she found she didn't mind. The sensation of being on horseback again awakened memories of happier times in Vermont, before her parents' deaths had changed everything. Owen proved to be an excellent guide, pointing out the boundaries of his property, explaining his grazing rotation for the cattle, and sharing stories of the land's history. "The creek that runs through the property is why I chose this spot," he explained as they rode alongside the burbling water. "Never runs dry, even in drought years. The Arapaho called it medicine waters because it healed their sick during a harsh winter long ago." "It's beautiful," Wilhelmina said, watching the clear water dance over stones. "Does it flood in spring?" "Smart question." Owen nodded approvingly. "It rises but has never reached the house. I built with flooding in mind, studied the old trees along the banks to see how high the watermarks went before choosing the house site." They rode for nearly 3 hours, stopping occasionally for Owen to check on cattle or repair a section of fence. Wilhelmina was impressed by his meticulous care for the land and animals. This was no absentee owner or careless rancher. Owen Reed understood his responsibility to steward what he claimed. Around midday, they stopped in a grove of cottonwoods beside the creek. Owen produced a simple lunch from his saddlebags: bread, cheese, dried apples, and a canteen of cool water. "You seem at home in the saddle," he observed as they ate. "Maple likes you." Wilhelmina stroked the mare's nose affectionately. "She's a sweet girl." "My father bred horses in Vermont, nothing grand, just good stock for local farmers. I practically grew up on horseback until we moved to Boston after he died." "How old were you then?" 16. "My mother took a position as a companion to a wealthy widow. The arrangement included my education at a good school, which eventually led to my teaching position." "And your mother, is she still in Boston?" Wilhelmina shook her head. "She passed 5 years ago, influenza." "I'm sorry," Owen said softly. "Losing parents is hard, no matter your age." "You speak from experience," he nodded. "Lost my mother when I was 12, father just after the war, no siblings." "So we're both alone in the world," Wilhelmina observed. "Not exactly," Owen replied, his eyes meeting hers. "I may not have blood family, but I have connections here, Mrs. Abernathy, the Jensens, folks in town I consider friends. Out here you create the family you need." His words resonated with her. Since her mother's death, Wilhelmina had felt adrift, with colleagues but no real friends, acquaintances but no meaningful connections. "Is that what you want?" she asked. "A family?" "Yes," he answered without hesitation. "Not just children, though I hope for those, but a true partnership, someone to share both burdens and joys." He looked out over the creek. "A ranch like this, it's too much for one person's dreams alone. It needs to be built on shared hopes." His honesty touched something in Wilhelmina. The practical arrangement she had initially agreed to suddenly seemed both more and less than she had imagined, more in its potential depth, less in its transactional nature. "And if I choose to leave after 2 weeks?" she asked quietly. Owen met her gaze steadily. "Then I'll drive you to the stagecoach myself and wish you well. I meant what I said. You're free to go, but I hope you'll find reasons to stay." The moment stretched between them, filled with unspoken possibilities. Then Owen stood, brushing crumbs from his trousers. "We should head back. There's a storm brewing to the west, and I'd rather not be caught in it." Wilhelmina looked to the horizon and saw dark clouds gathering. As they mounted their horses and turned toward the ranch, she felt a strange reluctance to end their outing. There was something freeing about being on horseback in this vast landscape with Owen Reed, something that made Boston and its constraints seem very far away. They reached the ranch just as the first fat raindrops began to fall. After stabling and caring for the horses, a task Owen insisted they share, they made a dash for the house, arriving on the porch as the skies opened in earnest. "Good timing," Owen laughed, shaking water from his hat. Wyoming storms don't mess around. Inside, Wilhelmina found herself suddenly aware of their solitude. With Mrs. Abernathy absent and the storm isolating the ranch, they were truly alone together for the first time. The propriety she had been raised with sounded alarm bells, but Owen seemed utterly unconcerned. "I'll build up the fire," he said casually. "Would you like tea? I'm not much of a cook, but I can manage that. Tea would be lovely, thank you." While Owen busied himself with the fire and kettle, Wilhelmina changed out of her riding habit into a simpler dress, leaving off the restrictive corset with a sigh of relief. When she returned downstairs, the fire was crackling merrily, and Owen had set out a tea tray on a small table between the chairs. "I hope you don't mind," he said, gesturing to the tray. "Mrs. Abernathy keeps things organized enough that even I can find what I need." "It's perfect," she assured him, taking a seat. The domesticity of the scene struck her, rain pattering on the windows, fire warming the room, tea shared with a man who was still largely a stranger but somehow felt less so with each passing hour. Owen poured for both of them, then settled into his chair. "So, what do you think of Reed's crossing so far?" Honestly, Wilhelmina considered her answer. It's more established than I expected and more beautiful. I can see why you chose this place. But, he prompted, sensing her reservation. But it's very isolated. Do you never feel cut off from the world out here? Owen chuckled. I left the world on purpose, Wilhelmina. The crowds, the noise, the endless social obligations, none of that appealed to me. Yet you sent for a bride from Boston, she pointed out. Surely that suggests some desire for connection. Connection, yes, but with one person, not society. He sipped his tea thoughtfully. I wanted someone to share this life with, not to recreate the world I left behind. And if your bride had wanted more society than this ranch provides, then we would have found a compromise. Silver Creek is growing. There are socials, church gatherings, a small library association. It's not Boston, but it's not complete isolation either. His answer surprised her. She had expected inflexibility, the stereotypical Western man demanding his wife adapt entirely to his way of life. You're not what I expected, Owen Reed, she admitted. Is that good or bad? I'm not sure yet, but it's intriguing. His slow smile warmed something inside her. Intriguing is a start. They spent the rest of the afternoon talking as the storm raged outside. Owen told her more about his journey west, his early struggles with ranching, and his plans for expanding his cattle operation. Wilhelmina shared stories of her teaching experiences, her love of literature, and her frustration with Boston's rigid social hierarchies. As evening approached, the rain eased, and Owen excused himself to check on the animals. Left alone, Wilhelmina wandered to the bookshelves again, selecting a volume of Tennyson's poetry. She was deep in Ulysses when Owen returned, his clothes damp but his expression satisfied. Everything weathered the storm well, he reported, even that ornery old bull that always finds trouble. I'm glad to hear it. She closed the book, using her finger to mark her place. Owen nodded toward the volume. Tennyson, good choice. You know his work, to strive, to seek, to find, and not to yield, he quoted. Words to live by out here. You continue to surprise me, Wilhelmina said softly. Good, predictable people are dull company. He smiled, then gestured to the kitchen. I should start supper, nothing fancy, I'm afraid. Let me help, she offered, rising from her chair. I'm not an accomplished cook, but I can follow directions. Together, they prepared a simple meal of beans, bacon, and cornbread. The domestic task felt strangely intimate, reaching around each other in the small kitchen, hands occasionally brushing as they worked. By the time they sat down to eat, Wilhelmina felt a warmth that had nothing to do with the cooking fire. Over supper, Owen asked about her teaching methods and educational philosophy. His genuine interest and insightful questions revealed a mind that valued learning for its own sake. Have you considered what you might do if you stayed? He asked as they cleared the dishes. Besides being my wife, I mean. The directness of the question caught her off guard. I hadn't thought that far ahead. Silver Creek does need a proper teacher, he said casually. The town council has been trying to recruit one for months. The salary is modest, but with a home provided. He trailed off, leaving the implication hanging. You think I could teach here and be a rancher's wife? The possibility hadn't occurred to her. Why not? The school term runs from September to May, leaving summers free, and it's only 3 miles to town. The offer was tempting, a chance to continue her profession while building a new life, but Wilhelmina reminded herself that she hadn't decided to stay beyond the 2 weeks. It's something to consider, she said neutrally. Owen nodded, accepting her non-committal response. Just a thought. There are options here, that's all I wanted you to know. Later, as they sat reading by the fire, Wilhelmina found herself watching Owen over the top of her book. His profile in the firelight was strong, his expression absorbed in his reading. There was an attractiveness to him she hadn't fully acknowledged before, not just physical, though he was certainly handsome, but in his quiet confidence and thoughtfulness. When Owen looked up and caught her gaze, she quickly returned to her book, embarrassed to be caught staring. But not before she saw the small smile that played at the corners of his mouth. That night, as she prepared for bed, Wilhelmina realized with surprise that she had not thought about returning east once during the entire day. The next morning dawned clear and bright, the storm having washed the world clean. Wilhelmina rose early, drawn by the golden light streaming through her window. Dressing quickly, she made her way downstairs, expecting to find the house empty. Instead, Owen was in the kitchen, kneading dough on the wooden table. "Good morning," he greeted her, flour dusting his forearms. "Sleep well?" "Yes, thank you," she gestured to his work. "I didn't expect to find you baking. Mrs. Abernathy taught me the basics. Can't survive out here without knowing how to make bread." He shaped the dough into a loaf and set it in a pan. "Coffee's hot if you want some." As Wilhelmina poured herself a cup, she was struck by the domestic scene. There was something appealing about this capable man who could build fences and bake bread with equal skill. "What's on the agenda today?" she asked, leaning against the counter. "Thought we might ride into Silver Creek if you're interested. Saturday's market day, good chance to meet some folks and see the town." The prospect of expanding her knowledge of the area appealed to her. "I'd like that." 2 hours later, they drove into Silver Creek in Owen's wagon. The town was larger than Wilhelmina had expected, perhaps 300 souls, with a main street boasting a general store, bank, hotel, church, and several smaller establishments. Market stalls lined the street, with farmers and craftspeople selling their wares. As they secured the wagon, Owen explained, "Silver Creek's growing fast. The railroad spur line came through last year, connecting us to Cheyenne, makes shipping cattle a lot easier and brings in more settlers." The activity in the town square reminded Wilhelmina of village markets in Vermont, the same mix of commerce and community, with people as interested in gossip as in goods. As they walked among the stalls, Owen greeted various townsfolk by name, introducing Wilhelmina simply as Miss Cooper, visiting from Boston. She noted that he made no mention of their potential arrangement, giving her the freedom to form her own impressions without the pressure of being scrutinized as his prospective bride. The consideration touched her. At the general store, Owen had business with the proprietor about a shipment of fencing wire. While he concluded his transaction, Wilhelmina browsed the shelves, surprised by the variety of goods available in this frontier town, canned delicacies from Europe, the latest Harper's magazine, even fashionable ribbons and trimmings. "Anything catch your eye, miss?" The shopkeeper's wife approached with a friendly smile. "You have an impressive selection for a town this size," Wilhelmina remarked. "That's the railroad for you," the woman replied proudly. "We get shipments weekly now, makes life a sight more civilized." She lowered her voice. "You staying with the Reeds out at the crossing?" "I'm visiting Mr. Reed, yes," Wilhelmina answered carefully. The woman's eyes twinkled knowingly. "He's a good man, that Owen Reed. Built that place up from nothing and honest as the day is long. Half the unmarried women in the county have set their caps for him, but he never seemed interested." She gave Wilhelmina an appraising look. Until now, perhaps. Before Wilhelmina could formulate a response, Owen rejoined them. "All set, Mrs. Perkins. Put it on my account if you would." "Of course, Mr. Reed. Always a pleasure." With a final meaningful glance at Wilhelmina, Mrs. Perkins returned to her duties. "Everything all right?" Owen asked as they left the store. "Mrs. Perkins can be a bit inquisitive, so I gathered," Wilhelmina replied with a smile. "She seems to think highly of you." Owen looked embarrassed. "Small towns, everyone knows everyone's business. Or thinks they do," she added, remembering the woman's speculation. Their next stop was the schoolhouse, a modest building at the edge of town. Finding it unlocked, Owen led Wilhelmina inside. The single room was basic but serviceable, with rows of desks facing a teacher's table, a small blackboard, and shelves containing a limited selection of books. "It's not what you're used to, I'm sure," Owen said, watching her examine the space. "Actually, it reminds me of my first teaching position in rural Massachusetts." Wilhelmina ran her fingers along a desk top, feeling the familiar smoothness worn by countless student hands. "How many children attend?" about 30 when everyone comes, ages 5 to 16, all levels together. That's challenging for one teacher. I imagine so. The older ones help with the younger, of course. Wilhelmina walked to the front of the room, imagining herself standing there each day. Despite its simplicity, the schoolhouse had a warm, welcoming feel. The town council meets tonight, Owen mentioned casually. If you're interested, I could introduce you to the school board members. No pressure, he added quickly, just an opportunity to ask questions. I'd like that, she decided. Even if I don't stay, perhaps I could offer some suggestions for their next teacher. Owen's smile told her he approved of her thinking. As they left the schoolhouse, Wilhelmina noticed a small building next door with a hand-painted sign reading Silver Creek Gazette. The town has its own newspaper, she asked, surprised. Of sorts. Walter Simmons publishes it weekly local news announcements, some reprinted articles from Eastern papers. He's also the telegraph operator. May we visit? I'd love to see it. Inside the cramped office, they found a bespectacled man in his 40s working at a small printing press. He looked up at their entrance, his face breaking into a wide grin when he recognized Owen. Reed, just the man I wanted to see. That bull of yours took top price at the Cheyenne livestock auction. I'm running the story in tomorrow's edition. Glad to hear it, Walter. This is Miss Cooper, visiting from Boston. She expressed interest in seeing your operation. Walter wiped his ink-stained hands on his apron before offering one to Wilhelmina. A pleasure, Miss Cooper. Always happy to meet someone who appreciates the power of the press. For the next 20 minutes, Walter enthusiastically explained his printing process, showing Wilhelmina how he set type and operated the small press. His passion for bringing news to the community was evident in every word. Miss Cooper was a teacher in Boston, Owen mentioned as Walter paused for breath. Was she indeed? Well, we're desperate for educated folks out here, Miss Cooper. Stay long enough and we'll find a use for your talents, I guarantee it. As they left the newspaper office, Wilhelmina felt a growing sense of possibility. Silver Creek, for all its frontier roughness, had an energy and optimism that reminded her of what she loved about America, the belief that something new and vital could be built from raw materials and determination. They spent the remainder of the afternoon exploring the town, stopping for lunch at the hotel dining room and visiting the small lending library housed in the back of the church. Everywhere they went, Owen was greeted with respect, and Wilhelmina noted how he seemed to know something about each person, asking after an ailing parent, congratulating a recent marriage, discussing crop prospects with farmers. You're very connected to this community, she observed as they headed back to the wagon with their purchases. It's important, he replied simply. A man can't survive out here alone. We depend on each other. And yet you maintain your independence on your ranch. There's a balance. I value my solitude, but I also recognize the need for community. He helped her into the wagon. It's not so different from a good marriage, I imagine. Two people maintaining their individual strengths while creating something stronger together. His philosophical comparison surprised her. You've given this considerable thought. I've had time, he said with a slight smile. Winter evenings are long, remember? As they drove back to the ranch with the afternoon sun warming their backs, Wilhelmina found herself increasingly drawn to Owen Reed. He was thoughtful, intelligent, hardworking, and respected by his community, all qualities she valued. But was that enough to build a life upon? The town council meeting that evening was held in the back room of the hotel. About a dozen men and 3 women were present, representing Silver Creek's prominent citizens and business owners. Owen introduced Wilhelmina to each of them, and she was received with curious but welcoming interest. The meeting itself was straightforward, dealing with road repairs, arrangements for the upcoming Independence Day celebration, and the perpetual issue of the school teacher position. We've had 3 inquiries, the council chairman reported, but none suitable. One couldn't provide references, another wanted an unreasonable salary, and the third was a young man of questionable character according to his previous employer. "Perhaps we should consider a female teacher," suggested one of the women present. "Laramie and Cheyenne both have women teaching their schools with good results. If we could find one willing to come to Silver Creek," the chairman replied skeptically. At this point, Owen cleared his throat. "Gentlemen, ladies, I believe we have a qualified candidate in our midst tonight. Miss Cooper has taught for 5 years at a respected Boston school." All eyes turned to Wilhelmina, who felt a mixture of embarrassment and interest. "I haven't decided to stay in Silver Creek," she clarified. "I'm only visiting for a short time." "But you are qualified," the chairman pressed. "Yes, I hold a teaching certificate from Massachusetts and letters of recommendation from my previous school's headmistress." This revelation caused an excited murmur among the council members. For the next half hour, Wilhelmina found herself answering questions about her teaching methods, disciplinary approach, and educational philosophy. To her surprise, the council seemed genuinely impressed by her responses. "The position pays $30 monthly," the chairman explained, "plus living quarters above the schoolhouse and fuel for heating. Term runs September through May, with breaks for harvest and Christmas." "That's very generous," Wilhelmina acknowledged, knowing it was a competitive salary for a rural school. "We value education here," one of the women stated firmly. "Many of us came west for opportunity, not to escape civilization." As the meeting concluded, the chairman approached Wilhelmina directly. "Miss Cooper, should you decide to remain in Silver Creek, consider the teaching position yours. We can draw up a formal contract whenever you're ready." "Thank you for your confidence," she replied, genuinely touched by their enthusiasm. "I need time to consider my options, but I appreciate the offer." Walking back to the wagon under a star-filled sky, Wilhelmina felt Owen watching her. "What?" she asked, meeting his gaze. "You impress them," he said simply. "Not just with your qualifications, but with how you handled yourself. Not many Eastern women would be taken seriously so quickly in a frontier town." They seemed genuinely concerned about their children's education. "They are. Most came west to build better lives, not just for themselves, but for the next generation." He helped her into the wagon. "Does that surprise you? Perhaps it shouldn't, but yes, a little. I had certain preconceptions about Western settlements. Wild and lawless, full of desperados and dance hall girls." His tone was teasing. "Something like that," she admitted with a laugh. "Those places exist," Owen acknowledged as he guided the horses onto the road home. "But for every wild boomtown, there are a dozen communities like Silver Creek, ordinary people trying to build something lasting." They rode in companionable silence for a while, the only sounds the steady clip-clop of hooves and the occasional night bird call. Above them, the Milky Way stretched across the sky in a brilliant band, more stars than Wilhelmina had ever seen in Boston's light-polluted skies. "It's beautiful," she murmured, looking upward. Owen followed her gaze. "One of the things I love most about this place. Makes a man feel both significant and insignificant at the same time." The depth of his observation resonated with her. There was a thoughtfulness to Owen Reed that continued to surprise and attract her. Back at the ranch, he built up the fire while Wilhelmina made tea. The domesticity of the routine felt increasingly natural, as if they had been sharing these tasks for years rather than days. Settled before the fire with their tea, Owen asked, "What did you think of the teaching offer?" "It's tempting," she admitted. "The salary is fair and the community seems supportive. But accepting it would mean committing to stay, and I haven't made that decision yet." Owen nodded, respecting her hesitation. "Of course, just know the option exists." Wilhelmina studied him over her teacup. "May I ask you something personal?" "Certainly." "Why did you really send for a mail-order bride? You're respected in the community, obviously capable of supporting yourself. Surely there were local women who would have considered you a good match." Owen was quiet for a moment, collecting his thoughts. "There were, and I considered that path, But the women here, they know me as the rancher, the businessman. They have expectations based on what they've seen and heard. And a woman from the East wouldn't. I hoped she might see me more completely. He set down his cup. When I came west, it was a chance to reinvent myself, to build something authentic. I wanted a partner who would know me as I am now, not as who I was or who others perceive me to be. That's remarkably self-aware, Wilhelmina said softly, or remarkably selfish, he countered with a wry smile. Asking a woman to travel thousands of miles based on a few paragraphs in an advertisement. Yet here I am. Yes, he agreed, his eyes holding hers. Here you are. The moment stretched between them, filled with unspoken possibilities. Wilhelmina became acutely aware of their solitude, of the intimate setting, of the increasing attraction she felt toward this complex man. Owen seemed to sense her thoughts. He stood, breaking the tension. It's getting late. We both should rest. Relieved yet somehow disappointed, Wilhelmina nodded. Yes, of course. Good night, Owen. Good night, Wilhelmina. As she climbed the stairs to her room, she found herself wondering what might have happened if he had stayed, if he had moved closer instead of withdrawing. The thought sent a flutter through her stomach that was both exciting and unsettling. Days passed, each one bringing Wilhelmina and Owen closer. They fell into a comfortable routine, mornings spent on ranch chores, which Wilhelmina insisted on helping with, afternoons exploring the property or visiting neighbors, evenings filled with conversation by the fire. Mrs. Abernathy came and went according to her schedule, providing excellent meals but also giving them space to develop their connection. On the 5th day, they rode to Widow Jensen's farm for dinner. Martha Jensen proved to be a formidable woman in her 50s who had successfully managed her late husband's property for over a decade. Her 3 youngest children still lived at home, while the older 3 had farms of their own nearby. So you're the Boston lady who's got Owen in a twist, Martha said bluntly as she served roast chicken. I was beginning to think he'd never find someone who could match his stubbornness. Mother, her 19-year-old daughter Sarah admonished, looking mortified, what, it's the truth. Owen Reed is the most determined man I know, good quality in a rancher, challenging quality in a husband. She winked at Wilhelmina. Takes a strong woman to stand her ground with a man like that. I believe we're learning to find common ground, Wilhelmina replied diplomatically, aware of Owen's amused expression. Good, that's the secret. Martha nodded approvingly. My Thomas and I fought like wildcats sometimes, but we always found our way back to common ground. After dinner, while Owen helped Martha's sons with a broken pump, the widow took Wilhelmina aside for a private conversation. Owen's been good to my family since Thomas died, she said without preamble. Helped the boys learn what their father would have taught them, never asked for anything in return. There aren't many men like that. No, I don't believe there are, Wilhelmina agreed softly. He deserves happiness, Martha continued. Been alone too long in that big house. I don't know what your intentions are, Miss Cooper, but don't trifle with him. He's not a man who gives his heart easily, but when he does, it's completely. The older woman's protectiveness touched Wilhelmina. I have no intention of hurting him, Mrs. Jensen. But we're still getting to know one another. Fair enough. Martha patted her hand. Just know that if you do stay, you'd be welcomed here. Silver Creek needs more women with backbone and brains. On the ride home under a waxing moon, Wilhelmina shared Martha's comments with Owen, who chuckled ruefully. Martha Jensen has been trying to marry me off for years. First to her niece, then to the banker's daughter, now to you. She cares about you, Wilhelmina observed. They all seem to. You've built not just a ranch, but a place for yourself in this community. It happened gradually, he admitted. When I first arrived, I was just the Eastern greenhorn trying to play rancher, made plenty of mistakes, but I learned, adapted, proved myself useful. Is that why you succeeded where others failed? Adaptability? Owen considered this. Partly, also stubbornness, as Martha noted. His smile flashed in the moonlight. And luck, good neighbors, decent weather, few disasters. You don't give yourself enough credit, Wilhelmina said. I've seen how methodical you are, how you plan for contingencies. That's not luck, it's intelligent management. High praise from a Boston schoolteacher, he teased, but she could tell he was pleased by her assessment. When they reached the ranch, Owen helped her down from her horse, his hands lingering at her waist a moment longer than necessary. The contact sent warmth spreading through Wilhelmina's body. "Would you like to walk a bit before turning in?" he asked. "The night's too beautiful to waste." "I'd like that," she agreed, taking his offered arm. They strolled along the creek path, their way lit by moonlight. The night was alive with sounds: crickets chirping, the occasional owl hoot, the constant gentle murmur of the water. "I've been meaning to ask," Owen said after they had walked in companionable silence for a while. "What made you change your mind that first day, when you tried to run away?" Wilhelmina considered her answer carefully. "Curiosity, perhaps. And your approach, offering freedom instead of demanding obligation, it surprised me. Made me wonder what kind of man would do that." "And have you found your answer?" She looked up at him, his features silvered by moonlight. "I'm still discovering it, but I like what I'm learning." Owen stopped walking, turning to face her. His expression was earnest, almost vulnerable. "Wilhelmina, I know we agreed on 2 weeks, but I need to be honest with you. I'm already certain that I want you to stay." Her heart quickened at his declaration. "Owen, please let me finish." He took her hands in his. "I'm not asking for your decision yet. You still have time, and I'll honor our agreement regardless. But I want you to know that these past days have shown me that my instincts were right when I chose your letter from among the responses." "What made you choose me?" she asked softly. "You never said." "Your honesty. Other women wrote about how they would be perfect wives, devoted and obedient. You wrote about your teaching, your love of books, your desire for partnership rather than merely marriage. You seemed real, not an idealized version of womanhood." His words touched her deeply. No man had ever valued her mind and spirit above the conventional virtues of female domesticity. "I'm not perfect," she whispered. "I can be stubborn, opinionated, good," he interrupted with a smile. "Perfect would be boring. I want a wife who challenges me, who brings her own strengths to our partnership." The word wife hung between them, no longer theoretical but increasingly possible. Wilhelmina felt herself drawn to him, to the life he offered, not just the physical ranch but the emotional home he seemed capable of creating. Owen reached up, gently touching her cheek. "May I kiss you, Wilhelmina?" His request, so proper and yet so intimate, made her breath catch. "Yes," she whispered. His lips met hers softly at first, then with growing confidence as she responded. It was not Wilhelmina's first kiss. There had been a young professor in Boston who courted her briefly, but it was unlike any she had experienced before. There was tenderness in Owen's embrace, but also passion, carefully controlled yet unmistakable. When they finally parted, Wilhelmina felt breathless, her heart racing. Owen's eyes searched hers, concern evident in his expression. "Was that all right?" he asked. The uncertainty in his voice, this confident, capable man suddenly vulnerable, endeared him to her even more. "More than all right," she assured him. His smile in response warmed her through. "We should head back," he said reluctantly. "It's getting late." As they walked back to the house, Wilhelmina's mind whirled with new possibilities. The kiss had changed something between them, making abstract considerations suddenly very concrete. This was no longer about the theoretical prospect of becoming a mail-order bride. It was about becoming Owen Reed's wife, specifically and particularly. The thought was both exhilarating and terrifying. At breakfast the next morning, there was a new awareness between them: shy glances, fingers brushing as they passed the coffee pot, an underlying current of possibility. Mrs. Abernathy, arriving to prepare their midday meal, seemed to sense the change, her eyes darting between them with knowing approval. "Fine day for berry picking," she announced after assessing the pantry. "The wild blackberries along the North Creek bend should be ripe. Might make a nice pie for supper." Owen nodded. I have fencing to check on that side of the property anyway. Wilhelmina, would you like to come along? You could pick berries while I work." "I'd enjoy that," she replied, welcoming the chance for further conversation after the previous night's revelations. They set out after breakfast, Owen carrying his fencing tools, Wilhelmina equipped with a basket for berries. The morning was perfect clear skies, a gentle breeze, wildflowers nodding in the meadows they crossed. At the berry patch, Owen showed her which bushes would have the ripest fruit before heading off to check his fence line, promising to return in an hour or so. Left alone with her thoughts, Wilhelmina found the repetitive task of berry picking soothing, allowing her mind to wander. She had just over a week left before her self-imposed deadline. The teaching position offered one compelling reason to stay, but the stronger pull was undeniably Owen himself. She was increasingly drawn to his combination of strength and gentleness, his intelligence and work ethic, his respect for her as an individual. And there was the kiss, the memory of which still sent warmth through her body. The physical attraction between them was undeniable, another factor in her growing inclination to stay, yet doubts lingered. Was a week and a half enough time to make such a life-altering decision? Would the isolation of ranch life eventually wear on her despite the proximity of Silver Creek? And most fundamentally, was what she felt for Owen truly the beginning of love, or merely infatuation born of circumstances? She was so lost in thought that she didn't hear the approaching horse until it was nearly upon her. Looking up, she was startled to see a stranger, a rough-looking man with several days' growth of beard, wearing dusty clothes and a battered hat. "Well, hello there, madam," he greeted her, his tone overly familiar. "Don't often find such a pretty flower out here in the wild." Wilhelmina straightened, instinctively wary. "Good morning. Are you looking for someone?" "Wasn't until now," he replied with a smile that didn't reach his eyes. "But seems I found something worth looking for after all." His manner made her uncomfortable. She glanced in the direction Owen had gone, wishing he would return. "This is Reed's Crossing. If you have business with Mr. Reed, he's checking fence lines nearby." The man's expression changed slightly at Owen's name. Reed, didn't realize this was his spread. He dismounted, moving closer to Wilhelmina. "And what might you be to our friend Reed? Wife, sister, or something more?" "Temporary." The insinuation in his tone made her skin crawl. She took a step back, gripping her berry basket tightly. "Sir, I don't believe your question is appropriate." "Please state your business or move on," he laughed, a harsh sound without humor. "Got spirit, don't you? I like that in a woman." Before Wilhelmina could respond, another voice cut through the tension. "Davidson. Didn't expect to see you back in these parts." Owen stood at the edge of the clearing, his expression cold and his stance alert. The stranger Davidson turned slowly, his hand hovering near his hip where Wilhelmina now noticed a holstered pistol. "Reed, been a while." Davidson's tone was casual, but his posture remained tense. "Just passing through, making conversation with the lady here." "The lady is under my protection," Owen stated flatly, "and you're trespassing." Davidson held up his hands in a mock gesture of surrender. "No harm intended, didn't see your brand on the property line. It's there. You chose to ignore it, same as you ignore most boundaries." Owen moved closer, positioning himself between Wilhelmina and the stranger. "What are you really doing here, Davidson?" "Like I said, passing through, heard there might be work at the Henderson place." "Henderson's not hiring. Especially not men who have served time for cattle rustling." Davidson's face hardened. "That was never proven. Only because witnesses had a habit of disappearing before trial." Owen's voice remained even, but Wilhelmina could sense the tension in his body. "There's nothing for you here, Davidson. Move on." For a tense moment, Wilhelmina feared the man might draw his weapon. Instead, he spat on the ground, then remounted his horse. "Always were high and mighty, weren't you, Reed? Too good for the rest of us." "Just law-abiding," Owen replied. "Something you might try." Davidson's eyes narrowed, then shifted to Wilhelmina with a look that made her shiver. "Enjoy your Companionship, Reed. Things happen out here in the wild, accidents, disappearances. With that parting threat, he wheeled his horse around and rode off. As soon as he was out of sight, Owen was at Wilhelmina's side. "Are you all right? Did he touch you?" "No, I'm fine," she assured him, though her hands trembled slightly. "Who was that man?" Owen's jaw tightened. "Vince Davidson. Used to ride with a gang that rustled cattle throughout the territory. Did some time in Wyoming territorial prison, got out last year. Bad news in every way. He seemed to know you. Our paths crossed when I first settled here. He and his friends thought my cattle would be easy pickings. They were wrong." Owen's expression was grim. "I testified against him at his trial. The implication was clear. Davidson had a personal grudge against Owen. His threat, should we be concerned?" Owen considered his answer carefully. "Davidson's mostly talk, but he's unpredictable when drinking. I'll alert the sheriff next time I'm in town, let him know Davidson's back in the area." He looked down at her basket, now half full of berries. "We should head back to the house." As they walked, Wilhelmina processed what had just happened. The encounter had revealed another side of Owen, his protective instinct, his quiet authority when facing a threat, his straightforward honesty about the situation. "Does this sort of thing happen often?" she asked as they neared the ranch. "No," he assured her. "Most days are peaceful. But the West still has its share of troublemakers, men who prefer taking to earning." "And that's who you were protecting your ranch from when you testified against him?" Owen nodded. "My ranch, my neighbors' ranches. We look out for each other out here." The incident, disturbing as it was, had clarified something for Wilhelmina. Owen Reed was a man who stood up for what was right, who protected what he valued, who had earned the respect of good people and the enmity of bad ones. These were qualities she admired deeply. When they reached the house, Mrs. Abernathy took one look at them and demanded to know what had happened. Owen gave her a brief, factual account of the encounter. "That no-good scoundrel," the older woman muttered. "Sheriff Hollister ought to run him out of the territory for good." "I'll speak to Hollister tomorrow," Owen promised. Mrs. Abernathy nodded, then turned to Wilhelmina. "You had quite a fright, Miss Cooper. Why don't you rest while I make some tea? These berries will keep for pie making." Though Wilhelmina protested that she was fine, she was grateful for the chance to compose herself. In her room, she sat by the window, watching Owen cross to the barn, his stride purposeful and his shoulders set with determination. The danger posed by Davidson was unsettling, but not enough to make her reconsider staying. If anything, it had shown her another facet of the life Owen led, one that required courage and principled action. That evening, after Mrs. Abernathy had left and they had enjoyed her blackberry pie, Owen and Wilhelmina sat on the porch, watching the sunset paint the western sky in brilliant oranges and pinks. "I'm sorry about today," Owen said quietly. "That's not the side of ranch life I wanted to show you." "Don't apologize," she replied. "It was educational in its way." "Educational?" He raised an eyebrow. "Yes. I saw how you handle adversity, how you protect what matters to you." She met his gaze steadily. "It told me more about your character than a dozen pleasant afternoons could have." A smile tugged at his lips. Still the teacher, finding lessons everywhere. "Always," she agreed, returning his smile. They sat in companionable silence for a while, the twilight deepening around them. Fireflies began to appear in the meadow, their lights blinking like earthbound stars. "When I was a child in Vermont," Wilhelmina said softly, "my father would tell me that fireflies were fairies carrying lanterns to light their way home." "Beautiful thought," Owen replied. "My mother had a different story. She said they were the souls of those who had passed on, coming back to check on their loved ones." "I like that," Wilhelmina said, moved by the sentiment. "Do you think of her often, your mother?" "Every day," he admitted. "She would have loved this place, the openness, the possibility of it all." "And your father?" Owen's expression grew more complex. "He was a practical man, would have seen the ranch as an investment, calculated its worth in dollars and cents." "But not its true value," Wilhelmina surmised. No. That was something he never quite understood, that some things can't be measured in ledger books. Like what? Like the satisfaction of building something with your own hands, the peace that comes at the end of a hard day's work, the connection to the land and animals in your care. He turned to face her fully. The way your heart can expand when you find someone who sees the world as you do. The intensity in his gaze made Wilhelmina's breath catch. Owen. I'm falling in love with you, Wilhelmina, he said simply. I know it's soon, too soon, perhaps, but it's the truth. You don't need to respond now. Just know that when I ask you to stay, it's not just for practical reasons anymore. His honest declaration left her momentarily speechless. No man had ever spoken to her with such directness about his feelings. I don't know what to say, she finally admitted. You don't need to say anything yet, he assured her, taking her hand in his. Just think about it, about us. As darkness fell around them, Wilhelmina found herself thinking of nothing else. The following days brought a new dimension to their relationship. Owen's declaration had changed the air between them, charged it with possibility, and a sweet tension that manifested in longer glances, more frequent touches, and conversations that delved deeper into their hopes and dreams. They established a rhythm together, sharing meals and chores, reading aloud to each other in the evenings, taking rides across the property to Owen's favorite spots. Wilhelmina found herself increasingly at home in the ranch house, rearranging small things here and there, adding her touch to rooms that had been purely functional before her arrival. On their 10th day together, Owen took her to a hidden valley on the far edge of his property, a secluded meadow surrounded by aspen trees, with a small pond fed by a bubbling spring. This is beautiful, Wilhelmina exclaimed as they dismounted. How did you find it? Accidentally, during my first winter here. I was tracking a lost calf during a snowstorm and stumbled upon it. Nearly missed it entirely. The entrance is narrow, easy to overlook. It feels like a secret garden, she said, kneeling to examine wildflowers growing near the water's edge. That's what I thought, Owen agreed, spreading a blanket on the grass. I come here when I need to think or when the pressures of the ranch become too much, and you're sharing it with me. She was touched by the gesture. I wanted you to see all aspects of life here, not just the work and responsibilities, but the quiet moments of beauty too. They picnicked beside the pond, sharing the lunch Mrs. Abernathy had packed for them: cold chicken, fresh bread, apple tarts, and a bottle of lemonade. The day was perfect, warm but not hot, with a gentle breeze rustling the aspen leaves. After they ate, Owen leaned back on his elbows, watching Wilhelmina as she wove wildflowers into a simple wreath. You look happy, he observed. She considered his comment. I am, I think. More than I expected to be. Enough to stay. The question was gentle, not pressuring. Wilhelmina set aside her flower wreath, meeting his gaze directly. I've been thinking about that a great deal. And I'm no longer certain that returning east is what I want. She took a deep breath. When I arrived, I was afraid of the unknown, of being trapped, of living with a stranger. But you're not a stranger anymore, Owen. Hope bloomed in his expression. What am I then? Someone I'm coming to care for deeply, someone I could envision building a life with. She smiled softly. Someone I think I could love given time. Owen sat up, taking her hands in his. Time is something I'm happy to give you, Wilhelmina. I don't expect instant love, just the chance to earn it day by day. You're already well on your way, she admitted, a blush coloring her cheeks. His smile was radiant. Does this mean you're staying? Yes, she said, the decision feeling right as she spoke it. I'm staying, for the teaching position, for Silver Creek, but mostly for you. Owen's response was to pull her gently into his arms, his kiss conveying all the joy and promise her answer had given him. This time, their embrace held more passion, a deeper connection that left them both breathless when they finally parted. I should have asked this properly before, Owen said, still holding her close. Wilhelmina Cooper, will you marry me? Not as a mail-order arrangement, but as a true partnership between two people who choose each other freely. Yes, she whispered, her heart full. Yes, I will marry you, Owen Reed. The ride back to the ranch was filled with plans and possibilities when they would marry, soon, but with enough time to plan a proper ceremony. Where they would live, the ranch house, with some modifications to make it truly their home. How they would balance Wilhelmina's teaching with ranch responsibilities. Owen was adamant that her career remain important. We should go into town tomorrow, Owen suggested as they neared home. Tell the school board you'll accept their position, announce our engagement properly. That sounds perfect, Wilhelmina agreed, still marveling at how quickly and completely her life had changed course. That evening they sat on the porch swing Owen had installed the previous summer, watching stars appear in the darkening sky. The future stretched before them, not without challenges, Wilhelmina knew, but full of promise and shared purpose. What are you thinking? Owen asked, his arm around her shoulders. That life takes unexpected turns, she replied. 2 weeks ago, I was fleeing from the very future I'm now embracing. Sometimes we need to run away to find our way home, he said softly. The profound truth of his words settled into Wilhelmina's heart. Owen Reed's ranch, this place that had initially represented captivity to her, had instead become a sanctuary where she had found freedom to be her authentic self, appreciated for her mind and spirit. When I sent that advertisement east, Owen continued, I hoped for a practical arrangement with a compatible woman. I never expected to find someone who would transform my understanding of what home could be. And what is that understanding now? She asked, curious about his perspective. That home isn't just a place or a house. It's wherever we're free to be ourselves and loved for who we truly are. He kissed her temple gently. You've made Reed's Crossing a home, Wilhelmina, in ways it never was before. His words moved her deeply. And you've given me the freedom to choose my path, something I value more than I can express. As night deepened around them, Wilhelmina reflected on the journey that had brought her to this moment. The mail-order bride arrangement that had seemed so desperate in Boston had led her to a man who offered not obligation but possibility, not confinement but partnership. The next morning, they rode into Silver Creek together, their happiness evident to everyone they encountered. At the school board chairman's office, Wilhelmina formally accepted the teaching position beginning with the September term. Excellent news, the chairman exclaimed, shaking her hand enthusiastically. And I understand congratulations are also in order regarding your engagement to our friend Reed here. News traveled fast in small towns. By the time they reached the general store, Mrs. Perkins already had wedding fabric suggestions ready for Wilhelmina's consideration. White's traditional, of course, but this cream brocade would suit your coloring beautifully, Miss Cooper. Thank you, Mrs. Perkins. I'll certainly consider it, Wilhelmina replied, amused by the woman's efficiency. At the newspaper office, Walter Simmons insisted on running an announcement in the next edition of the Gazette. First mail-order bride in Silver Creek to actually stay and marry her intended, he declared with journalistic enthusiasm. Makes a fine human interest story. Owen squeezed Wilhelmina's hand reassuringly. Perhaps we could focus on the engagement and teaching position rather than the mail-order aspect, Walter. The editor adjusted his spectacles, recognizing his faux pas. Of course, of course. Local rancher to wed Boston educator has a distinguished ring to it, don't you think? Their final stop was the sheriff's office, where Owen reported Davidson's threatening behavior. Sheriff Hollister, a weathered man with shrewd eyes and a no-nonsense demeanor, took the information seriously. I'll keep an eye out for him, he promised. He's been seen at the saloon in Junction City causing trouble there. If he shows his face in Silver Creek, I'll have a word. I appreciate it, Sheriff, Owen said. Especially with the wedding coming up, don't want any unpleasantness. Speaking of which, the sheriff said, brightening, my wife will be mighty pleased to hear about your engagement. She always said you needed a good woman to settle you down proper. Seems everyone had an opinion on my marital status, Owen commented wryly as they left the office. That's because they care about you, Wilhelmina pointed out. You've built more than a ranch here, Owen. You've built relationships that matter. He nodded thoughtfully. I suppose I have. Didn't realize how much they mattered until recently. Until you had someone to share them with. She suggested. Exactly. His smile was warm as he helped her into the wagon. Life's better shared, Wilhelmina. That's something I've learned since you arrived. The following weeks passed in a whirlwind of activity. Wedding preparations kept Wilhelmina busy, while Owen divided his time between ranch work and making improvements to the house. He added built-in bookshelves to the study, expanded the kitchen garden at Wilhelmina's request, and began work on a proper bathing room with indoor plumbing, a luxury few ranch houses possessed. The wedding was set for mid-August, giving them time to prepare but ensuring Wilhelmina would be settled before the school term began. Martha Jensen took charge of organizing the celebration, enlisting help from the Women's Auxiliary and transforming the planning into a community event. Nothing brings folks together like a wedding, she declared, especially when it's a couple everyone approves of. 2 days before the wedding, Owen and Wilhelmina rode into town for final arrangements. The church was already being decorated and Mrs. Perkins had completed Wilhelmina's dress, an elegant creation of cream-colored silk with delicate lace accents. It's perfect, Wilhelmina breathed when she tried it on for a final fitting. I never imagined having such a beautiful wedding dress. Every bride deserves to feel special, Mrs. Perkins said firmly, and you've brought our Owen the happiness he deserves. After completing their errands, they started the journey home. The afternoon was warm but pleasant, with high clouds providing occasional relief from the August sun. As they rounded a bend in the road about halfway to the ranch, Owen suddenly pulled the wagon to a halt. What is it? Wilhelmina asked, noting his tense expression. Smoke, he said tersely, pointing toward the horizon, coming from the direction of the ranch. As they watched, the thin column of smoke thickened, turning an ominous dark gray against the blue sky. Could it be a controlled burn, or Mrs. Abernathy cooking something? Wilhelmina suggested, hoping for an innocent explanation. Owen was already turning the horses. Mrs. Abernathy isn't due today, and no one would be burning anything in this dry weather. His voice was tight with concern. We need to hurry. He urged the horses to a faster pace, the wagon bouncing over the rutted road. As they drew closer to the ranch, the smoke became more visible, definitely coming from the main house area, not the outlying fields. When they crested the final hill overlooking the property, Wilhelmina gasped in horror. The barn was fully engulfed in flames and the fire was spreading toward one of the corrals. Even from a distance, they could hear the panicked whinnies of trapped horses. Owen pushed the team to their limits, racing down the slope toward the inferno. Before the wagon had fully stopped, he was jumping down, shouting instructions. Stay back, Wilhelmina. Get the water pump working if you can. He sprinted toward the barn, where one of his ranch hands was already trying to free the horses. Wilhelmina didn't hesitate. She ran to the well pump and began working the handle vigorously, filling the nearby trough. 2 more ranch hands appeared from the fields, responding to the smoke signal of disaster. She directed them to form a bucket brigade from the trough to the edges of the fire. For the next hour, chaos reigned. The heat was intense, the smoke choking, but gradually they managed to save most of the horses and prevent the fire from reaching the house. By the time Sheriff Hollister and several men from town arrived, drawn by the smoke column visible for miles, the worst was over. Owen, his face streaked with soot and his shirt singed in places, approached Wilhelmina as she distributed water to the exhausted firefighters. Are you all right? He asked, his voice hoarse from smoke. I'm fine, she assured him. What about you and the animals? 2 horses lost, he said grimly. Most of the tack and equipment too, but the house is safe and no people were hurt. Sheriff Hollister joined them, his expression grave. This wasn't an accident, Reed. found coal oil splashed around the outside of the barn and tracks from a single horse heading east. Owen's jaw tightened. Davidson. That would be my guess, the sheriff agreed. This has his style written all over it: cowardly, destructive, calculated to cause maximum damage without direct confrontation. But why? Wilhelmina asked, struggling to understand such malice. Revenge, Owen said flatly. For my testimony for the years he spent in prison. I've sent riders to Junction City and Bitter Creek, Sheriff Hollister informed them. If he's still in the territory, we'll find him. As the sheriff organized a proper search party, Owen surveyed the smoldering ruins of his barn. The structure was a total loss, along with most of its contents: saddles, tools, feed, and the two unfortunate horses that hadn't escaped in time. All that work, he murmured, his expression desolate. Years of building gone in an hour. Wilhelmina slipped her hand into his. The important things remain: the house, most of the animals, all of the people. He squeezed her hand gratefully. You're right, it's just... He trailed off, the full impact of the destruction still sinking in. We'll rebuild, she said firmly, together. Owen looked down at her, love and gratitude mingling in his expression. Together, he repeated, finding strength in the word. As night fell, neighbors began arriving: the Jensens, farmers from nearby homesteads, townspeople from Silver Creek. They brought food, tools, offers of help with rebuilding, and in one case a wagon load of lumber already cut to size. Heard what happened, the lumber mill owner explained gruffly. Figured you'd need to start rebuilding right away. This should get you started on a temporary shelter for those animals. Martha Jensen organized the women to clean the house and prepare food for the workers, while her sons joined the men in clearing debris and salvaging what could be saved from the barn ruins. Look at this, Wilhelmina said softly to Owen as they watched the community in action. All these people coming together to help. It's humbling, he admitted. I've helped them over the years, but seeing them all here now. This is what community means, she told him. What you helped build is more than just a barn or a ranch. It's connections between people who care for each other. The impromptu work party continued well into the night. By dawn, a temporary shelter stood where the barn had been. The debris had been cleared away, and plans for a permanent replacement were already being discussed. As the sun rose, Sheriff Hollister returned with news. Davidson was seen crossing into Colorado territory last night. We'll alert the authorities there, but he's beyond our immediate reach. Will he come back? Wilhelmina asked worriedly. Not likely, the sheriff replied. Men like him strike and run. Besides, he'll know we're looking for him now. Owen nodded, accepting the news with grim resignation. Thank you for trying, Sheriff. What about the wedding? Martha Jensen asked the question on everyone's mind. It's day after tomorrow. Owen looked at Wilhelmina questioningly. We could postpone if you prefer. No one would blame us under the circumstances. Wilhelmina considered the exhausted but determined faces around them: neighbors who had worked through the night to help, friends who had rallied in their time of need. These were the people who would form their community, their extended family in the years to come. No, she decided firmly. We'll marry as planned. After all, a wedding is about beginning a life together, not about perfect circumstances. A cheer went up from the assembled helpers, and Martha nodded approvingly. That's the spirit, dear. Life out here throws hardships at you regularly. Best to face them head-on together. Owen pulled Wilhelmina close, his arm around her waist. Are you sure it won't be the perfect day we planned? It will be perfect because it's ours, she replied. And after what we've just experienced, I'm more certain than ever that this is where I belong, by your side, facing whatever comes. The kiss he gave her then, witnessed by their friends and neighbors, sealed more than their engagement. It cemented their partnership in the face of adversity, their commitment to building a life together regardless of challenges. 2 days later, Wilhelmina Cooper became Wilhelmina Reed in the Silver Creek Church, its interior transformed by wildflowers and ribbons into a place of celebration. Her cream-colored dress, miraculously unharmed in the fire, drew admiring comments from the assembled guests. "Never seen a prettier bride," Walter Simmons declared for his newspaper account. The Boston schoolteacher and the Wyoming rancher, a true American story of new beginnings. The reception was held on the grounds of Reed's Crossing, itself a deliberate choice that Wilhelmina had insisted upon. "Let's reclaim our home with joy," she had urged when Owen suggested alternate locations. "Show that one act of destruction cannot diminish what we're building here." Tables were set up beneath the cottonwood trees, decorated with more wildflowers and Mrs. Abernathy's finest tablecloths. The temporary barn was disguised with bunting, and lanterns were strung from tree to tree, ready to illuminate the celebration once darkness fell. As Wilhelmina moved among their guests, accepting congratulations and well wishes, she marveled at how completely her life had transformed in just a few short weeks. The woman who had tried to flee from a mail-order marriage now embraced her new identity as Mrs. Reed with pride and joy. "A penny for your thoughts, Mrs. Reed," Owen murmured, appearing at her side with 2 glasses of punch. "I was just thinking about that first day," she replied, accepting a glass. "How certain I was that I needed to escape. And now," she smiled up at him, love filling her heart. "Now I can't imagine being anywhere else. Even with a burned barn and the prospect of a frontier winter ahead, even then." She raised her glass in a small toast, "To the unexpected journey that brought me home." "To finding love where you least expected it," Owen added, touching his glass to hers. As the celebration continued around them, Wilhelmina reflected on the strange, wonderful path that had led her to this moment. She had come west seeking security, found freedom instead, and in that freedom discovered a love she had never thought possible. The first year of marriage brought challenges and joys in equal measure. Rebuilding the barn consumed much of the autumn, with Owen and his hired hands working long hours to complete it before winter set in. Wilhelmina divided her time between teaching at the Silver Creek School and learning the practical aspects of running a ranch household. There were difficult moments, the first heavy snowfall that isolated them for nearly a week, a brief illness that left Owen bedridden during spring calving season, the occasional friction that comes when 2 independent people learn to share a life. But these challenges only strengthened their bond. Each successfully navigated difficulty, building confidence in their partnership. By their first anniversary, the ranch was thriving once more. The new barn stood strong, designed with improvements Owen had long considered. The house had evolved too, with Wilhelmina's touches softening its bachelor starkness, curtains at the windows, comfortable cushions on the chairs, flowers from her garden brightening the tables. They celebrated quietly, with a special dinner prepared by Mrs. Abernathy and an exchange of meaningful gifts, a finely crafted writing desk for Wilhelmina, hand-selected with her teaching work in mind, and for Owen, a pocket watch engraved with their wedding date and the words "for all time." As they sat on their porch swing afterward, watching the sunset paint the sky in familiar splendor, Owen put his arm around his wife. "Happy, completely," she assured him, resting her head on his shoulder. "Though I do have news that may change our lives somewhat." He looked down at her, curiosity in his expression. "Oh," Wilhelmina took his hand and placed it gently on her still flat stomach. "We'll be welcoming a new Reed to the Crossing next spring." Owen's face transformed with wonder and joy. "A baby, you're certain, Doctor?" "Patterson confirmed it yesterday," she said, her own happiness bubbling up in laughter at his expression. "You're going to be a father, Owen Reed." His response was to gather her in his arms, holding her as if she were the most precious thing in the world. "I love you," he whispered against her hair, "more than I ever thought possible." "And I love you," she replied, marveling at how natural those words felt now. "Thank you for giving me the freedom to discover that love on my own terms." As darkness fell around them, Wilhelmina reflected on the journey that had brought her to this perfect moment. The mail-order bride who had tried to run away had instead found her true destination not in a geographical place, but in the heart of a man who had offered freedom and received love in return. Reed's Crossing was no longer just a ranch in the Wyoming Territory. It was home, in the deepest sense of the word, a place where two people had chosen each other freely and built a life founded on mutual respect, shared purpose, and enduring love. And as the stars appeared above them, mirroring the lights of distant Silver Creek, Wilhelmina and Owen Reed looked toward their future with hope and confidence, knowing that whatever challenges lay ahead, they would face them together.